that isn't putting the kind of work in that's necessary to really think through a subject. So I'm not real keen on them. I did say yes, to arts, and I said yes to the other thing, but a lot of this doesn't really translate well, to especially radio.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it would have been with art, because a lot of these things you have to show visuals.
Yeah.
Again, you have to direct people to again, databases or primary sources and things. You can't really do that on radio. So it might have been really a dull, kind of stupid experiment, to do in the first place, but that's usually sort of what people think of right away.
So what has been the reaction to your work on Ancient Alien stuff in terms of both positive and negative, and on negative, the two sides of the negative, because you said that you get negative responses both from more biblical Christian people, but also you get the negative responses from the Ancient Aliens people.
Well, from the Ancient Aliens people, it's usually a diatribe. If people bother to email me, it's to yell. I mean, there are very few people who sincerely want information. You've attacked their hero, and now they're getting back at you, and I understand that. So there's that. On the Christian side, there's also some of that, and it's usually from real strict, 24-hour day literal creationist, kind of people.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not their special target. They do that to anybody who isn't them. I remember sitting down before I had dinner with Hugh Ross before the God-Man E.T. conference that Hoagland was part of way back in, I guess that was, again, 2003 or something, as while I was still in grad school. And Hugh told me, he's an astrophysics guy and not a young earther or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
He said the only place he's ever been picketed at, and he does a lot of speaking,
yeah.
so the only place I've ever been picketed at is at churches. And it's always the same crowd. It's the hyper literalists.
Mm-hmm.
That just, if you're not us, you're them, and that means you're against us, and all that kind of thing. So I get a lot of it from that angle, because my concern is that a lot of this thinking, generally, is the same. Again, this over-literalizing of the text, where, I see a spaceship in there, I see an alien life form in there, I see this, I see that. And if you disagree with them, then, you're not taking it for what it says, literally right there. Never bothering to even ask the question, what does literalism even mean? And how workable and livable is it in any given text in any given day of our lives? You're never bothering to answer or ask those questions. So it creates, again, this enemy situation. But, even beyond that, I see Christians who are interested in all this kind of stuff, the UFO stuff, the alien stuff, and what I see them doing is they're borrowing, really imbibing on a lot of these really bad arguments about the ancient world generally, but including the Bible, and then they're using them as interpretive filters for their Bible and for their worldview. And when you point that out and you give them examples, they don't really take it well.
No, they don't.
And I can even say, look, I'm on your side. I'm a theist. I'm a Christian. I understand this. I have a high view of this thing we call the Bible. I mean, I'm sure I have different views about it than you do, but I'm in your corner. I want you to have a good day. But they just, there's a visceral reaction because it's interpreted as an us-them, enemy sort of relationship. But again, I kind of treat that crowd the same way. If you're looking for information, I will be as helpful as I possibly can, given my limited resources and time. But if you're not, I'm really not going to keep this conversation going. I really can't help. There's nothing I can say. So you just sort of let them go.
Okay. To shift gears entirely and take a break from Ancient Aliens, etc., I was listening to the interview that you gave to Art very recently, and you talked about an investigation that you facilitated into the MJ-12 documents. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that, because I thought personally, hopefully my listeners will as well, I thought that it was fascinating. To start off with, though, could you give a very brief overview about what these documents are alleged to be and alleged to be in support of?
Sure. Well, in briefest terms, the so-called majestic documents, MJ-12 documents, are a set of leaked documents. I mean, now we're up to hundreds, and some of the sources are known, but initially in the 1980s, they were a set of leaked documents that purported to come from some sort of government or intelligence insider. And the documents made, some pretty spectacular claims. They were, for example, internal memos, that passed, from presidents and other higher ups, cabinet officials, members of an organization that was known as Majestic 12, that was supposedly formed after the Roswell incident in the 1940s, 1947, to investigate, crash retrievals and things like this. So they mentioned crashes of flying saucers. They mentioned EBEs, extraterrestrial biological entities, in other words, aliens, in them. There's speculation in them back and forth about, well, the only explanation for this is something off-planet. I mean, there are these sort of throwaway kind of conversations or terms that are used, and even getting people like Oppenheimer and Einstein involved, and some of them predate World War II. They predate Roswell. Back in the early 40s, there's some that were supposedly written by FDR, and about planetary intelligences and things like this. So, in the UFO community, the majestic documents, at least at one time, were viewed as sort of a smoking gun. That wow, we finally got documents that are real, and they talk about all the things that we've been saying for years, and you couldn't get this through Freedom of Information Act. Somebody on the inside had to risk his life and limb and career, to put these out to the public, and boy, we hope he doesn't get caught, sort of the Edward Snowden kind of thing, but put back, 20 or 30 years ago. And so that's what the MJ documents are. Now, they have a very checkered history. Anyone who's really into ufology will know that a lot of these, again, are traced to a guy named William Doty, who is a well-known disinformation person, even within the UFO community. One of these people that basically, he's like the Spader character on what's the new show, The Blacklist. You trust this guy ever at any given point? That's the Doty character right there. So within the UFO community, a lot of people don't buy them today because they just have such a checkered history. Now, there are some that do. Some that think some of them are genuine, and so they're still around, they're still alive, they're still part of the discussion, and they are, again, viewed as proof positive of an alien cover-up.
What kind of analysis did you do, or did you help to do?
Yeah, the latter would be more accurate. The majestic documents have had a very thorough going over from a forensic perspective, things like dating of the ink, the kind of paper, the typography, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of the material itself, and a lot of that kind of investigation has verified, to the best of anyone's ability, that, hey, this thing I'm holding here actually did come from the 1940s, and we know what typewriter it was on, all that kind of stuff. So that doesn't really help, because if someone were on the inside that wanted to fake these things, that's what I would use. I mean, I wouldn't be an idiot and come up with something that came from the 1990s or something, year 2000. So what I wanted to do, since I'm in language and linguistic areas, I knew that there were methods out there where documents, specifically in terms of verifying authorship, could be tested. There were people out there who did that stuff. Within the field of New Testament, this has been, I don't want to say it's still in its infancy, it's a little bit beyond infancy, but there are people who are doing this kind of work to Greek New Testament books and whatnot. So I had the idea, well, I want to find somebody who does this, and ask them if they would be willing, if they'd be interested in having their methods applied to some of these documents. And I found that person. Her name is Carol Chasky. She has her PhD from Brown. This is her field. She has a very long resume, long history of doing this in the legal system, where she is brought in and asked to verify the authorship of some document in some court case. I mean, people can go to her website and see all the cases she's worked on and whatnot. As part of her doctoral work, she developed a computational linguistic process to do what she does today. And so I thought, well, this is the perfect person. Well, I called her, and lo and behold, she'd actually been approached by the Woods, Bob and Ryan Wood, who are the sort of caretakers of the Majestic documents. She had been approached years earlier, but they had backed out of the discussion. And she said she didn't know why. They just lost interest. Well, that made me even more interested, and I asked her, will you do this? And we worked out an arrangement where I could give her what she needed. Now, I've used the word authorship a few times here. What Carol does is something called authorship attribution